Hello, and welcome to the next event in our app prep series, advising and asking for and collecting letters of recommendation. Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm an advisor here at Health Professions, and I'm so glad that all of you are here. I'll just give you a moment to read the land acknowledgement. There we go. So let's sort of look at what we're going to roll through today. First of all, I just want to introduce Health Professions Advising if you're kind of new to us and introduce ourselves. So proud of my team. Um, we'll talk a little bit about the HPA services and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of um, letters of recommendation, how to ask for them and how to collect them. We'll answer things like how many letters do I need? What's the timeline on this project? What is the before, during, and after process? What do I need to prepare? How do I ask? And then actually collecting your letters of recommendation. So hello again from HPA. We're on a mission here. We're on a mission to serve all UC Davis undergraduates, graduate students, and alumni. Anybody that's pursuing a health profession or an allied health field. A little bit about our process. We see you as whole people with a bevy of strengths and skills and knowledge and ability. And so we'll be looking at your growing professional competencies and encouraging all future applicants to be pretty active in their own pursuit of academic enrichment and experiential education, while also just being self-reflective on this process that you've all signed yourselves up for. You're going to be in school for some time, so that self-reflection is really a key part of just noticing what's going well, how to match up yourself with your academic experience. Here's the home of HPA, be it ever so humble. We're out here just past the Arc. If you were heading towards the domes, not just down the street from Student Health and Counseling. And this is what you're looking for. This is our building, and our building is called Orchard House. We've got a lot of advisors here with a lot of different backgrounds and experiences. Many of us have been in health professions advising for a long time. We have specialists in writing. We have specialists in test prep. We have specialists in marketing and events, and people with deep knowledge of what it takes to help students thrive in the application process. So we're here for you. We also have some super specialized advisors that are current students in professional school programs. So we have student advisor staff who are in med school, in nursing school, in vet school, and we also have recent UC Davis alumni who are advisors. And we're super proud to have our peer advisors. They certainly have a perspective that's valuable to you. They're the ones who are taking these classes currently and can comment on what the classes are actually like and how they themselves are navigating their educations here at UC Davis. Yeah, so never hesitate to reach out. Our peer advisors are great ones to ask if you're looking to make last minute decisions about your prerequisite classes, especially as your pastime may be coming up now. If you're thinking about how to gain meaningful experience, look at this, letters of recommendation right at the top of the list. They know our application timelines, and they are like the rest of us here, see you as whole people who are learning and growing while you're here at Davis. So, how to be in touch with us? You could just call. Here are our hours for calling. Um, you could also come by drop-in advising. The great thing about drop-in advising is those appointments don't start filling until 8 o'clock the same morning, so they don't fill up. Um, and that is way, way quicker than waiting for a scheduled appointment. The scheduled appointments are a little longer, um, and you can have those in person or on Zoom or on the phone. Those can book up to 3 weeks in advance. So you could maybe think of two drop-in appointments as the same as one scheduled appointment, if that worked for you. And keep an eye out for the advising appointments that our peer advisors have. So, what do we do over here at Health Professions Advising? We've got this combination of year-round programming. So, you might know us from HPA at Wall Hall. You might know us from guest speaking at some of your student orgs. You might know us from having panels of admissions reps. Shout out to Spring Break Road Trip coming up March 24th to 27th. Um, you might know us from having panels of professionals. That would be something that we'll do definitely during pre-med boot camp this summer. Um, we also have programming like this series that you're at right now, the app prep series. We're super, super proud to have a test prep specialist right on our team. So if you're looking for a strategist to sort of think through how you're going to prepare for your standardized exam, what goes into studying for it, if you want to take practice full length test under realistic testing conditions, check out our test prep resources. We will practice with you for interviews during interview week, but really anytime if you just pop into drop-in advising, we'll throw a question at you and give you some constructive feedback. I already gave a shout out to Spring Break Road Trip and summer boot camps. Um, then we have some bigger events, and by big, I mean really big. We have the Pre-Health Conference, largest in the nation, all student run. I hope that we can get that in the Guinness Book of World Records. We also have a pre-vet symposium, Aspiring Black Physicians Conference coming up this month, first year and transfer student orientations. Hope that some of you have been to some of those. And we even have a high school symposium. So we're creating that pipeline for successful students before students even get here. Just to go back one. So the best way to use our services here at HPA is to partake of some of these larger events, the workshops, the web pages, the events, but let that raise questions about your own preparation and your own application. And then come in and see us individually. So you're always kind of working back and forth between the larger scale resources and then coming in and asking your individual questions. I never want you to get all of your advising just from a recording or just from a web page. Definitely talk to a real advisor who can, like I said, personalize it for you because we see you as a whole person. All right, let's jump right into letters of recommendation. How do we ask for and collect these letters? Well, whether you know it or not, you've already started collecting your letters of recommendation because it's all about building relationships. Um, the hope is that your whole application lines up and makes sense together. We're hoping that your recommenders see in you the qualities and skills that you see in yourself. So if you're writing a personal statement, we hope that your recommender will provide some support for more or less the same things that you're saying about yourself. I threw in this acronym here. So letters of recommendation is sometimes abbreviated as LOR. You'll see it that way, and I just wanted you to recognize it when you see it. So part of asking for letters of recommendation is finding ways for faculty and principal investigators to see you in action, providing opportunities for them to see your behavior and compare your behavior to the other students that they've had experience with so that they can meaningfully say what skills you're bringing to the table that are unique, and how you solve problems, and how you'll be successful in your eventual professional schools. All right, I thought that rather than describe what letter writers are looking for, I would lean on the AAMC. That's the American Association of Medical Colleges, and they control everything about med school applications. Um, Application tips for letter writers in different professions would be pretty similar. So I just brought this up as an example. So letter writers are asked to provide an accurate assessment of an applicant's suitability for medical school rather than advocate for the applicant. So think about your letter writers. Have they had a chance to observe your behavior and form some opinion about your suitability? Um, Letter writers are also asked to briefly explain their relationship with you. How long have they known you? In what capacity did they interact with you? Were they your teacher? Were they your pre-med advisor? Or were they your supervisor? And they'll also be asked if their observations of you were direct or indirect. So we'll get into a little bit about working with TAs and how your faculty might get to know you indirectly. Then the AAMC reminds letter writers that the quality of information is more important than the letter length. They're advised to focus on you rather than the details of the lab or the assignment or the job or the institution. That makes sense. I think that's a good pro tip that your letter writers are keeping in mind. I love that this gets to the issue of letter length. Whoops, went too far forward. My guess is that faculty have a template for their letter of recommendation on their desktop, and that they're going to fill in a couple or a few sentences about you. It's the kind of task that they're hoping to finish kind of quickly, and get on to the next thing. So remember that letter length is a part of what faculty are considering when they're sitting down to write a letter for you. Um, Letter writers are advised to only include information about grades or GPA or MCAT scores to the extent that they can provide context to interpret them. So no need for your letter writers to reiterate these sort of facts about your preparation, because those will be shown in other places in the application. I find this one to be the one that is most helpful to me when I'm working with students. I think I started out by saying, we're hoping that your recommenders see in you the qualities that you see in yourself. So you need to put yourself in situations where they can see you behave. Um, Whether that's in class or in the lab, the letter of recommendation is much, much stronger when your writer can observe and describe your suitability for your professional school. Then also, letter writers are advised to be sensitive about your potentially private or sensitive information, and to check with you about if there's any information that would be considered potentially private or sensitive. So if that's a conversation that you need to have with your letter writer, by all means, go ahead. Um, Finally, the letter writers are invited to comment on the unique contributions that you would bring to an incoming class. At HPA, we all often talk about that as the value that you would add to your incoming class. What obstacles have you overcome? And how did those obstacles lead to your new growth and learning? This kind of foreshadows the other impactful experiences that you'll also write about as part of your application. They're asked also to comment on contributions you would bring to the medical school's diversity broadly defined, whether that's through your background, attributes, or experiences. And finally, admissions committees are invited to, or finally, admissions committees find it helpful when letter writers use comparison information. So think about all of the students that your letter writers have encountered before. They have seen a lot, right? And they have formed opinions. They've seen students who thrive at the university. They've seen students who hit hurdles at the university and then ghost. They've seen students who hit hurdles at the university and dig deep. They've seen students that use resources effectively. Um, they've seen students work through problems, and your letter writers are in a fairly good position to compare you to other students in a class that they've taught, other students in your department, or if they're not faculty, they might have basis to compare you to other coworkers. So um, that it helps you understand a little bit more about how your letter writer needs to see you and how you need to build that relationship before even asking for a letter of recommendation. Any questions up to there? I'm just going to put a little pause on and check the chat here. All right, I'm going to keep rolling. Um, so next up, I wanted to talk about competencies. In any field, whether it's pre-health or honestly anything, all through your lifetime, you're growing in your ability to get stuff done. You're growing in the knowledge, skills, and abilities, the predispositions, the mental and social skills that you use to solve problems. Um, and um, Different professions have different lists of core competencies for their profession. Um, so you want to be familiar with those core competencies, and you also want to think about who do you know that can comment on your competency. Thanks for your question, Daya. We will make recordings of this program. I'm not sure exactly where on our webpage those will get stored. Probably under application preparation in the top navigator on the webpage. All right, so here are the AAMC core competencies. There's so many of them that honestly, you're growing in these ways anytime you walk out the door. And they're pretty diverse, but you can immediately see how each one underlies your preparation as a pre-health student. Whether you're in class learning critical thinking or the all-important writing skills, whether you're in a student-run clinic, learning to pick up people's nonverbal communication, coming to understand human behavior, whether you're flexing your empathy muscles in a service organization, or showing your own resilience and adaptability at the Academic Assistance and Tutoring Center, wherever you are and whatever you're going through, you're growing these core competencies. I like to say that your story is your strength. So we look forward to working with you to describe the experiences that you've had, especially in your experiential side of your education, but also in your academic side of your education, and sometimes even on the personal side, what you've lived through. Um, we'll be looking to recognize these competencies and skills in you so that you can share them with your admissions committee. By the same token, we're hoping that you give your letter of recommendation writers the opportunity to see you in action exercising some of these growing competencies. Next big question. How many letters do I need? Short answer, it varies. For the most part, you'll need 2 science faculty, 1 non-science faculty, and 1 non-academic. Ideally, a physician or vet or PA or dentist. Your admissions committee would like to know that you kind of know what you're getting into, right? That you've had a chance to observe this field and find out that you're comfortable solving the kind of problems that they solve, and that you're comfortable in the settings and with the clients that you'll be serving. Public health counting as non-science. Curiously, in the AAMC list of course classification, they do classify public health as non-science. But come on in and talk with us about who your potential recommenders are, and we'll sort through what our options are. But I like the direction of your question. I also wanted to talk for a minute about a committee letter. Committee letter is something that you might hear more about on the East Coast, or might have heard more about in the 50s. It's a letter that where someone on campus pulls together different letters of recommendation and compiles them into one letter. So they'll be taking quotes from this professor, taking quotes from that professor, trying to synthesize the information for your admissions committee. None of the University of California UCs offer that service. So a committee letter is something you might hear about, but it probably won't be part of your experience coming out of Davis. All right, so we know how many letters we need, and we know what we're aiming to show our recommenders so that that they can write about us meaningfully. Let's delve into this question. Who are we going to ask? So step one, maybe somebody from community college. If you're a transfer student and you had a good amount of success, yes, absolutely. Asking recommenders from your community college is appropriate and welcome. I'm going to say something that's a little bit double-sided, but I'm going to trust you to understand me here. In life, we know that sometimes people make decisions by a rule of thumb, which is almost practically a stereotype. Um, Sometimes some letters are perceived to be more prestigious than others. So letters signed by faculty and letters by faculty at a 4-year institution are sometimes perceived to be stronger and more prestigious. I'm not saying that that's true. I'm just saying that sometimes people roll with that kind of shorthand thinking. So sometimes we're a big university, right? Sometimes the person that has seen you in action and is in a good position to comment on your core competencies might be your TA. And that's fine. Those TAs, they know a lot about student behavior. They're in a good position to have observed you and to compare what you bring to the table to what other people bring to the table. So you can absolutely ask a TA, but you want to send a little email in advance to both the TA and the faculty member and ask if the faculty member would be willing to sub-sign so that on the letter of recommendation, the TA signs, and then underneath it, the faculty member signs. And it's likely that the TA would even write the letter, but the faculty would be asked to add their clout to the letter that the TA is writing. It's as you know, people are moving around all the time. If somebody used to be your faculty here at Davis and they've left, that's fine. You can work through LinkedIn or through your department to learn where that person has gone next. Of course, we wish everybody great success, right? I hope that if somebody that was your TA has gone on to a postdoc or maybe even a faculty position. So keep track of your people. LinkedIn can help you with that, and your department can help you with that. Might take some sleuthing. Um, if it's a professor who you took a class with a long time ago, that's fine too. You might need to refresh that relationship. So go by office hours, let them know what you've been up to. Faculty just want to know that they had an impact on you. And so sometimes a professor that you had a class with a long time ago could be good, especially if you've grown in the ways that they would have recognized in you since you've been with them. On the other hand, if that relationship is too far past and they can't remember you very well, then that might be a challenge. But that's all down to a kind of nuanced conversation. I would recommend that you sit down with the person and then just sort of try to suss out what they remember and how strong you think that letter of recommendation would be. Thank you, Avantika, for your question. So you're asking, for science professors, are more recent professors more valuable than professors earlier in your undergraduate career? Oh my gosh, well, I'll let you write the PowerPoint next time. You knew exactly where I was going. Thanks for that question. I think I already answered it though. Okay, so back to this question about how many letters do I need? We actually asked a few of the schools to get some data together for you. So the UC Davis School of Medicine is going to ask for 3 to 6 letters of recommendation, and one from a physician is definitely recommended. At Toro, our nearest osteopathic school, they are asking for letters from 2 science professors and 1 physician. For osteopathic schools or DO schools, it's extremely important that you shadow a DO. And there's a Toro in Vallejo offers a service called Shadow. It's like a pun. I'm going to write it here in the chat so you can see it. Through which they will line you up with osteopathic physicians to shadow, which is a really great service to the community. So check that out. If you're having any trouble finding it, come see me at drop-ins and I'll get you going in the right direction. We checked in with the Samuel Merritt PA program. They said they would like 3 letters, one from a physician or a PA is preferred. UCSF School of Dentistry is asking for 3 letters, one from science faculty, one from a dentist or a researcher, and one your choice. For MD school, good question, Colin. Thank you. For MD school, does it matter if you shadowed an MD or a DO? No, that doesn't matter as much. The MD schools just want to know that you know the demands of the work environment, and they want all those other qualities that the AAMC letter writer guide outlines. But they won't be as concerned about whether it's from a DO. DOs, on the other hand, because a big part of their education includes that training in osteopathic medical manipulation, um, and because it's a little bit subtle to learn how to talk about DOs without resorting to the word holistic. They really want you to get in there and be a little bit more deeper in your understanding of what osteopathic medicine is all about. Yes, schools can receive more than the minimum asked for. Thank you for your question, Stormy. Go ahead and check with your application service to find out the maximum number of letters that they will read. To be fair, these are very, very busy people that are trying to narrow down long, huge stacks of applications. So don't overwhelm them. Choose people who can speak about your experience meaningfully rather than more. But again, I'm down to have a conversation with you individually about like who's on your list, and let's talk through the pros and cons. Another great question coming in, does the physician letter of recommendation need to be in a clinical or shadowing capacity, or can it be your principal investigator? Yeah, absolutely. No matter the role that someone is in, as long it's more about whether they've seen you in action and whether they're able to talk to the strengths and values that you'll bring to your eventual professional program. Thanks for all the great questions, y'all. I guess my summary then, responding to these questions is, you don't have to be rigid about who your recommender is. Refer more back to the qualities that we want the recommenders to have observed in you. And we want them to be able to make meaningful comments about your preparation to contribute to your school or your profession. Hoping that helps. Okay, this is where I feel like my value add is. Y'all, you got to get organized, okay? Get a little bit organized. So this is how I would recommend that you set up a tracker, or you might call it a list or a checklist, for getting all of these letters of recommendation in. I do love a check box, right? Like, who doesn't love that dopamine hit when you check something off? So I recommend, this is how you could set it up in like a Google Sheet or an Excel sheet. List your recommenders down the side. What's their contact information? Then each of these columns is like a step in the life cycle of the project of getting this letter of recommendation in. It's breaking it down into small parts and giving you the opportunity to be accountable for delivering each of these stages. We'll talk about each of these stages more in a minute, but you're going to reach out, you're going to meet with them, you're going to provide supporting documents, you're going to set them up to submit those letters. For follow-up is definitely part of the game. I'll walk you through exactly how you know when the letter has been submitted. If not, I put in here not a checkbox for the follow-ups, but a recirculating. This may need to happen more than once. And then, of course, sending your thank you note. What I love about this kind of tracker is the dates that you provide, not just the check boxes. Having the dates on here puts you in control of your own behavior, right? So if we're all grown-ups here, right? So we know that like if things fall to the bottom of the email inbox, they might as well never have existed. And that can happen with your faculty because they're doing what is for them a small little job. This is, you know, a quick task that they're hoping to get on their desk and off their desk and out the door. And they might be trying to fit that in between some of the bigger things that they're doing, research, teaching classes. So if you think that a letter might have slipped too far down in the inbox, it's okay to follow up. And by having a date on here, that puts you in charge of hitting the balance between reminding frequently enough that things don't get lost and also not reminding so often that you're a pest, right? You want to hit it right in between there. Um, I'm happy to talk with you individually about where your comfort zone lies on that. Any questions about getting organized before I go on? All right, I'm going to keep rolling. All right, let's walk it through a timeline now. So in 3 phases, step one is get familiar with what's required of you. Um, when does your application open? What are the deadlines associated with that application? How long is application verification expected to take? And what's your secondary timeline? I guess I'll just walk through. You might be familiar with some of these terms from your previous app prep um, workshops that you've attended. So opening date is the date that your centralized application service opens their software for you to read. They will have a slightly later date at which you can hit submit from that application. What's the very latest you can do it? Almost all of your applications will have a will be rolling, meaning there are literally more spaces available at the early stage of the process than there are at the end of the process. Like you could apply right up against the deadline, but I suspect they will have given away all their seats by the deadline. Um, Application verification is a process where your centralized application service staff at that service verify that everything you entered into your application is accurate. So they'll go line by line of what you entered as the coursework you've taken and compare it to your transcript and other verification processes. That takes a minute, right? Accuracy. Then secondaries are a second part of your application that you submit. So the bulk of your application is called your primary. And then if the schools take a look at those and feel great about your application, they'll invite you to send a secondary where you talk more about how you're a match for their schools. The secondaries are known for being a ton of writing and require exceptional organization to stay on top of. Step two in your timeline is reach out to your letter writers. The earlier, the better. Give them 2 or 3 months to write the letter. And then step three, follow up and thank them for their time. So you will have seen all of these represented in the spreadsheet that I was recommending to get yourself organized. Um, it's common for people to ask about the timelines for their individual applications. And so here's a little bit of a summary. AMCAS is the application service for people going to MD programs. Get those letters in ASAP, ideally by July or August, if you're aiming for an early review. Med schools won't look at your secondaries until they've got everything, so get those letters of recommendation in there. Same story for AACOMAS or DO programs. Submit those letters by late summer or early fall to stay ahead of the deadlines. Each school sets its own timeline, so double check those timelines and convey them to your letter writers. CASPA for PA programs, those letters must be submitted before the application can be verified. So early submission is key for CASPA. ADSAS is for your dental programs. So those letters should be in before the earliest school deadline. because some schools are going to want to read those letters of recommendation before they send secondaries or schedule interviews. So check with your individual schools if you're applying dental. And then VMCAS for veterinary programs, they call the letters of recommendation letters of evaluation, so LOE. Those are required and they must be in by the VMCAS deadline, which is usually mid-September, and they will not take late submissions. So as you're in your process of setting yourself up for success, part of the task is to research your timeline and what your schools and centralized application services are requiring. Okay, pro tips. Ask early, give your letter writers at least 4 to 6 weeks to craft something. I don't think that they're going to spend a Saturday thinking about the finer nuances of their relationship with you. I think they're going to fill in those 2 or 3 sentences pretty quickly, but you need to give them time to feel accommodated and feel like they've been respected around all the many other things they're trying to get done in their professional lives. Um, Double check, like I said, the individual program deadlines. Some services are stricter than others. Aim to have those letters in 2 to 4 weeks before the deadline. Nobody likes the last minute stress. Um, Not you, not your letter writer, not the application services. So give yourself a great amount of grace, a great amount of a grace period in this process. So yeah, just a reminder that your letters of recommendation are just as important as all these other pieces that you're bringing together, your personal statement, your GPA, and your experiences. So that's why we're having this session, so we can prep. Okay, so remember I was saying the letters of recommendation process has sort of a beginning, middle, and end um, process. So before you're going to prepare some supporting documents. Those include your cover letter, your attachments, and directions to your writers. So your cover letter includes a description of your plans and dates. So that'll be like, I'm planning to apply PA in the coming application cycle, which opens on whatever date. And suggestions for your letter writer. I'm going to get more into this in a minute, but it's okay to be fairly direct about how people know you and what you think they've observed about you. Basically, like, why are you asking them? The directions should be typed um, and they should include where to submit and by when to submit. So it's really nice to have all of this in one tight email so that someone can easily thumb through their emails and find all the information about how to submit for you. Then we would like for you to attach quite a bit of information about yourself. That's going to include your personal statement, or as good as you have it by the time you need to ask, your resume, your transcripts and scores, and a letter writer guide, like those points, those 6 points that I was showing you from AMCAS that help letter writers know what to focus on in their letter when writing a supportive letter. Personal statement. I've occasionally seen students stumble on this point of like feeling the pressure of getting that personal statement together and sort of wishing that their letter writer would write a letter for them without reading their personal statement. But I want to push back on that sensibility a little bit. Um, I know that it's super high stakes to write your personal statement. We're here to help you with that at HPA. And I definitely want you to have that together by the time you give it to your recommender, because we're trying to make sure everything matches up and goes together, right? So how will they know what to focus on as your strengths if they don't know what you're saying about your strengths? Whoa, okay, this came out kind of wild. Um, just underlining the timeline for pre-med students, ask anytime, but at least by March. That will give your letter writer enough time to write your letter. So the timeline kind of goes in May, the application will open and you can look at it. In June, the application is being verified. And then, whoop, sorry. Then by July, your secondaries might come to you and you might get busy trying to complete them. Okay. Still in the before asking for a letter of recommendation phase, I want to recommend some things to prepare. So part of your request is the purpose and classes. So imagine you're composing an email to a faculty member or a PI or someone you've shadowed. You're going to write a positive statement to that person, asking them to persuade admissions committees to accept yourself into their professional schools. Let them know how you know them, like what classes did you take with them and what did you earn in those classes. And then let them know why you chose them. Why did you carefully select them as your letter writer? And focus on the joy. Let them know what you enjoyed about their class. Point to a specific point in the quarter where you were really learning and growing. Let them know what core competency you got stronger in because of that course or because of that experience. Let them know how you grew as a student or how you grew as a person because of that course. Remember, faculty want to know that they had an impact. And talking about your growth is a great way for them to say that they've seen change in you, to growing into the kind of person that would thrive in your professional program. Um, and then finally, be specific about how the timeline works. Let them know that you'll contact them sometime during the week of whenever. Be specific around your deadlines, with a friendly reminder to submit to your application service soon. Let them know what you're attaching to provide other information about yourself, and offer to provide any other support that they need to get that letter written. You can give them your contact information and then, of course, thank them. So when you get this all together, it looks like this. I'll just let you read for a minute. I just wanted to show you some format requirements. So your letters of recommendation must be on official letterhead and they must be signed. All right, so that was all the before. Now I want to talk about how you ask for a letter of recommendation. Ideally, you want to sit down with someone in person. The letter of recommendation process is blind, meaning you'll never see that letter. So you want to look them in the eye, ask them, will you be willing to write a strong letter of recommendation for me? And then just pick up the vibes in the room, have all your spidey senses turned on. And that might be as much as you ever know what's in that letter of recommendation. I think sincerely asking if someone would be willing to write a strong letter of recommendation for you lets them know it's important to you, and it gives them an opportunity to say that they don't know you that well, or that they have some concerns, or that they're super willing and they're excited about your journey. So ask in person if you possibly can, and be aware of the cues that you're picking up. And then share your packet of materials that you've prepared in advance. Andrea, look at how great your question lined up with this PowerPoint. So the second part of, so this workshop is called Asking for and Collecting Letters of Recommendation. So all of what we've talked about now is about how to make that ask. Now let's talk about how to collect those letters. If you're applying, if you're collecting a letter of recommendation close to the time that you're applying, like within 6 months before your application, you can upload it directly into your application service. So directly into VimCAS or AMCAS or whatever. You'll go ahead and create your identity and your application number, your ID number, and start filling in your application. And in that application, you'll find a box to name your recommender, their position and title, and their contact information. Your centralized application service will send an automated email to the person you've nominated as a recommender, and it will pop into their inbox. Once they complete that letter and send it to your application service, you will get a follow-up email that says letter of recommendation has been received from whoever it was received from. So you can use those moments to keep filling in your tracker and keep yourself organized about whether those letters have officially made it into your application. If you're collecting a letter now, but you're not applying for a couple of years, you can use a service called Interfolio. They will hold your letter securely and confidentially until you need it. If your letters are quite old, like a couple years old, you might go back to a recommender and ask them to refresh the date and maybe even update their letter based on the way you've grown and matured since that letter. But Interfolio is a really good service for collecting letters, especially when you're asking in advance. And it's easy to move letters from Interfolio into your centralized application service. Because these letters are confidential, you never want to collect those in person. In fact, when you're filling in the request in Interfolio and in your application, you'll check a box saying like you waive your right to see that letter. So never collect a letter in person. And then sometimes every once in a while, somebody will say something off the cuff like, oh, just write your own letter. And I give that a little pause. Okay. Sure, absolutely. You know what you wrote about yourself in your application, and you know what you hope your recommender observed about you, but you don't want to write that in the first person, right? It's totally fair game to write to your recommender and say, hey, I think that you would know me from my organizational ability, for my organizational abilities based on the fair that I organized while I was interning at your at the clinic, right? You can absolutely write, like, I think you know me as pro-social because when my classmate broke their wrist, I was the one making sure that they got a great set of notes after every class, right? It's totally fair game to tell them what you think they know about you, but tell them what you think they know and let them write those few sentences that they're going to fill in the middle of their template about you. Let them do that writing. But again, if they're asking you to write your own letter of recommendation, just turn it slightly. Just say, like, I'd be super willing to write a little statement about what I think you've had the opportunity to observe are my strengths. I see a bevy of questions coming in. Yeah, you could still use Interfolio if you're applying this cycle, but why not just put it in your application in the first place? Saves a step. And I can't remember if there's a fee for Interfolio, but I suspect that there is. Um, if I'm taking a gap year, would it be smarter for me to use Interfolio while I still have a closer relationship with my advisors and professors? Yes, I think that's one of the great uses of Interfolio. Um, Jen, thanks for your question. And thanks for being here, Jen. Um, if we are asking more people for a recommendation as letters or backups, should we let them know that they're backups in case we end up not using their letters? I think you have to do that. In your application service, you'll have control over which letters you end up submitting. Um, so you know your relationships better than I do, but I think I would try to be making my letter writers feel dynamite about the fact that we had these experiences together, and that it was an honor for you to work with them, and that you're very honored that they're writing your letter. I don't think I would take any of the wind out of that. Okay. Okay. Now, for our follow-ups. Immediately after you meet with somebody, send a very nice thank you letter. Thank them for being willing to write a letter for you. Um, Reiterate that you'd be happy to share any materials that they need, and let them know that you'll be looping back closer to the deadline if you haven't heard anything back. Um, you can always send another well-written email thanking them again and reminding them that the deadline is coming up. If you are getting very close to the deadline and you are uncomfortable, A, check your gut with your HPA advisor, but then B, you could send this sort of an email that kind of asks if a person would like to be let off the hook, right? If the deadline is very close or even past, you could send a letter asking like, is this something that you're able to do? And if you're not able to do it, that's going to be fine, but I just like to know one way or the other. So that will have to be handled with your usual superior um, uh, social skills, very thoughtfully crafted, but it's totally acceptable. We know that this is part of being an adult, right? Is that sometimes people don't carry through on things that they promised they would do, and we just need to get clarity. Sometimes that happens. And you may find yourself navigating that. We can help you. Final tips. Look, you guys are so amazing. You have an enviable education. You have all this experience. You have your lived experience. You've gotten this far. You are really, really ready for this application process. So you be you, right? Be genuine and authentic. Be yourself. When you're going through the process, try to stay present and engaged. Um, um, Try to be present with people in any stage of the relationship that you're in, but especially when you're asking for something that you need support on. And finally, be respectful, ask nice and far in advance, use your best tone in your requests, and you're assured of success. I will put these I'll put these links in the chat for you. So these are links to the letter writer guide from the AAMC, and then we have a standing HPA webpage that kind of walks you through letters of recommendation if you need a refresher. All right, thank you all for staying with me. I know we went a couple minutes over 5 o'clock. I'm really honored that all of you made the time to be here. I'm going to actually turn off the recording and take questions. Just a last minute reminder to stay connected with us here at HPA. We're here for you. Don't go it alone. We can keep being your advisors even when you're alumni from Davis. All right, turning off the recording now.
I just had a quick question.
Oh, one sec. I still haven't
Okay.
got the recording turned off. I'm gonna find this button here any minute now, surely. There we go.